me step out. So I got one microphone on we do before we get started. Good Lord, today everybody's hitting everybody. I know. So if I step out, that's fine.
Don't stand behind
No,
me.
geez.
It's dangerous.
All right, good morning, committee. Sorry for the delay. I'd like to make an announcement that we have Representative Brandon Woodard replacing Representative Brett Parker. So welcome to committee today. The first item on the agenda is going to be bill introductions. And actually, I have 3 bill introductions today in regards to the state budget. The first is the governor's supplemental bill for all agencies for fiscal years 2021 through 2032. And the RS number is 21 RS 0349. Do we have a second? Second by Representative Wolfmore. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, bill's introduced. The second is the governor's mega bill for all agencies for fiscal years 2022 through 2024. And the RS number is 21 RS 1264. Is there a second? Second by Representative Wolfmore. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. The third is the CAPERS Death and Disability Employer Contribution Moratorium Bill. That RS number is 21 RS 1267. Do we have a second? Second by Representative Wolfmore. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bill's introduced. Any further bill introductions? Representative Helgerson.
Mr. Chairman, I have the distinction of introducing the Governor's re-amortization bill. Number is 21 RS 1268.
And you're so distinguished. Is there a second?
Come on.
Second by Representative Carlin. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. Bill's introduced. Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to introduce a bill that was in the works last year regarding property tax and the dark store theory. The RS number is upstairs. I'll get it to you later.
Okay, we'll come back, and when you have the RS number, we'll come back to that item. Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have bill, it's 21 RS 1233, and it's an act concerning the Department of Corrections authorizing the Secretary of Corrections to enter into agreements for public-private partnerships for projects for new or renovated buildings at correctional institutions for education, skills building, and spiritual needs programs.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a second? Second by Representative Carpenter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Speaker Pro Tem Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here today on behalf of the Kansas Attorney General, Derek Schmidt, to ask for a bill introduction for 21 RS 1065. This is the Kansas Fights Addiction Act. This creates a fund for the settlement of the opioid claims that the announcement came out, I think, about a week and a half ago. About $5 million have been paid so far. Creates a fund and an oversight mechanism for that fund to be used to fight drug addiction throughout Kansas.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Second by Representative Helgerson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bill is introduced. Any further bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none. Committee, you should have received the minutes by email from the February 2nd meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Representative Concanon, a second. Second by Representative Rajas. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Okay, so how we're going to do this today in regards to the budget recommendations that were received on Monday and Tuesday is we're going to have a motion made by the chairman of the respective budget committees to approve the recommendations from their budget committees. If you do have any amendments, we'll have discussion on that after the motion is made. So first, I will turn it over to the chairman of the General Government Budget Committee, Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure what order you have these in, but I'm just going to go through the stack in the order that I have them in.
Whatever order you want to proceed.
All right, sounds perfect. I'd like to move the committee recommendations for CAPER's budget for 21 and 22.
Committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Wolfmore. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Representative Sutton, you may close.
I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The budget is passed out. Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the budget recommendations for the Office of the State Treasurer for fiscal years 21 and 22.
Committee, you've heard the motion. Second by Representative Wolfmore. Discussion on the motion for the budget for the State Treasurer. Seeing none, Chairman Sutton, you may close.
I do close.
Committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Budget is passed out. Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the committee recommendations for the Pooled Money Investment Board, years 21 and 22.
Committee heard the motion, seconded by Representative Wolfmore. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Sutton, you may close.
I do close.
Committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the committee recommendations for the Secretary of State's office for fiscal years 21 and 22.
Committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Wolfmore. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Sutton.
I close.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion passes. Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I expected more conversation on that one. I'd like to move the Budget Committee recommendations for the Governmental Ethics Commission for fiscal years 21, 22, and 23.
Committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Wolfmore. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Chairman Sutton, you may close.
I close.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, budget's passed. Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move the committee recommendations for the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission for fiscal years 21 and 22.
Committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Wolfmore. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Sutton.
I close.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Pass as amended.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the budget is passed as amended. Chairman Corbett.
Excuse me, Chairman. What's our next budget?
I'm showing the Board of Veterinary Examiners.
Okay. I move that the budget for veterinary examiners be approved for 21 and 22 by Appropriations Committee.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Carlin. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Corbett.
I move.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, budget passes. And the last one I see is the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board.
So I move that the budget recommendations for CURB for 21 and 22 be approved by the Appropriations Committee.
Committee, you heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Carlin. Any discussion on the motion? I'm sure we'll have discussion in regards to the incidents of this last week in regards to CURB. All right, seeing no further discussion, Chairman Corbett.
I move.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. I'll now turn it over to Chairman Carpenter. So please indicate which budget you're going to start with a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee, we'll start with the Board of Mortuary Arts. I move the budget for 21, 22, and 23 for the Board of Mortuary Arts.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, you may close.
I close.
Committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Carpenter.
Next budget, Board of Pharmacy. I move the budget for 21, 22, and 23 for the Board of Pharmacy.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. Seconded by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee, the next one, Board of Nursing.
You need to move your motion.
Oh, I close.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the budget for the Board of Pharmacy is passed. Now, Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee, Board of Nursing, yesterday there were some questions about the unlicensed nurses. And here's what I have received from the Board of Nursing. The number of nurses practicing without a license, 91 and 2020, was the number of nurses who did not renew their nursing license on time and continue to practice as a nurse after their license had expired. The Board of Nursing sends out reminders 90 days before the renewal date and the reminder again 30 days before the license renewal date. However, there are some nurses who do not renew on time and continue to practice. Typically, their employer discovers that they are practicing without a license, and the nurse must reinstate their license at that time. The nurse must report to us at that time they practice without an active license. This is considered practicing without a license.
All right, thank you, Chairman Carpenter. Do you have a motion?
Yes, I do. I move the Board of Nursing and 22.
All right, committee, you heard the motion, seconded by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the motion? Representative Carlin.
Thank you. I'm wondering what about the license, not renewing the license. We had that in vet medicine too. The veterinary medicine folks said that a lot of people were not renewing the license and it was getting to be an issue. So do we need to do anything about that, or is that you're just reporting it?
Chairman Carpenter.
I'm just responding to a question yesterday about the unlicensed nurses that were in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on the Board of Nursing? All right, seeing none, Chairman Carpenter.
I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Budget is passed out for the Board of Nursing. Chairman Carpenter.
Next budget, Healthcare Stabilization Fund, Board of Governors. I move the budgets for 21 and 22.
All right, committee, you heard the motion, seconded by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, Chairman Carpenter.
I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Budget is passed. Chairman Carpenter.
Next one is the Kansas Guardianship Program. I move the budgets for 21 and 22 for the Kansas Guardianship Program.
Thank you. All right, committee, you heard the motion, seconded by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Carpenter.
I close.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Carpenter.
And my last budget is a Kansas Commission on Veterans Affairs, and I move the 21 and 22 budgets for the Kansas Veterans Affairs.
All right, committee, you heard the motion, seconded by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Carpenter.
I close.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And actually, Chairman Carpenter, we need to go back to the Board of Nursing because in the original motion, it was just for 21 and 22, but there's also a budget for 23.
I'm sorry, and I did have that actually written down here, but I didn't see it. So you just want me to amend it?
Pass the budget out for fiscal year 2023.
Okay, I would make a motion to pass out the budget for 23 for the Board of Pharmacy.
All right, committee, you hear the motion, seconded by Representative Ballard. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, you may close.
I close.
All right, you've heard the motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 2023 for the Board of Nursing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then also for Chairman Corbett, we did not have in the original motion on the Board of Veterinary Examiners for fiscal year 2023. So we need to have the same motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 2023.
Move for the budget for 2023 for veterinaries be approved by the Appropriations Committee.
All right, is there a second? Second by Representative Carlin. Any discussion? Seeing none, Chairman Corbett, you may close.
Close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, now we'll move on to Chairman Francis. And please indicate which budget you're going to be starting with.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start off with the Abstractors Board of Examiners. And I move the House Budget Committee recommendations for fiscal years 2021, 2022, and 2023.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Kincannon. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Francis.
Next, we'll do the Board of Technical Professions. And so I move the House Budget Committee recommendations for fiscal years 2021, 2022, and 2023.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Wolfmore. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move my motion.
Committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on to Board of Indigence Defense Services. And I move the House Budget Committee recommendations for fiscal years 2021 and 2022.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. Seconded by Representative Wolfmore. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move my motion.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the Kansas Bureau of Investigations House Budget Committee recommendations for fiscal years 2021 and 2022.
Committee, you heard the motion. Seconded by Representative Wolfmore. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Chairman Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move my motion.
Committee, heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Thank you, committee. I know in the last couple of days it's kind of been, what was that? That was quick. It was quick. Kind of a little unprecedented on how we did that since we had the budget report outs and then had to delay the voting until today. So I appreciate everyone's cooperatives in regards to that. So the next item on the agenda that we have is a hearing on Senate Bill 1, and this would be authorizing the State Fair Board to use monies in the State Fair Capital Improvements Fund for general operations for fiscal years 2021 and 2022. I thought she was be out by 9:30. All right. Actually, we're going to hold off on that because we're waiting on the reviser to come from is it Ways and Means? Because the reviser is in Senate Ag and Natural Resources Budget Committee. So actually, we're going to hold off that when we wait for the reviser to be able to present in regards to that. So now we'll go ahead and turn it over to the Higher Ed Budget Committee report. And so I'll turn it over to Chairperson Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So committee, today we're looking at the post-secondary education statewide. That summarizes state expenditures for higher education. The state operates 6 universities under the control of the Board of Regents, and that the universities are divided into 9 budget units. So I think you all are familiar with the fact that we look at one huge Board of Regents and university budgets called the post-secondary education system-wide, rather than looking at each individual university. You can find that information on in Volume 2, page 787. I'll give you just a minute to pull that out. And in that, there's the big one, the statewide one that we're talking about, but also afterwards, each individual unit also has their budget. So you can look through that too for more information. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with FY 2021. For operations in this year, FY 2021, the agencies request a revised estimate of $3.2 billion, including $828 million from the SGF. This is an all funds increase of $81.5 million, or 2.6%, and an SGF increase of $295,724, or less than 0.1% above the approved amount. The all funds increase is primarily due to federal funds from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, the CARES Act, and the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, the GEAR. The SGF increase is due to supplemental requests for the National Guard Scholarship Program. As far as capital improvements, the agencies estimate a revised capital improvement budget of $146.8 million, including $607,350 SGF. This is an all funds increase of $22.2 million, or 17.8%, and an SGF decrease of $1.7 million, or 72.2% from the approved amount. The all funds increase is due to an overall increase in rehabilitation and repair projects across all of the campuses. The SGF decrease is due to KU Med Center not expending SGF for rehabilitation and repair, and a decrease in the SGF debt service principal payments. So the governor concurs with the agency's revised estimates, with the exception of not recommending the supplemental request of the National Guard Scholarship. And they were okay with that, by the way. That was, and we'll see that again in FY 2022. But for 2021, they were okay with that. And then also the decrease is lapsing the reappropriations for K-State and Pittsburgh State at $2 million apiece. The governor also concurs with the capital improvements estimates. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendations with the following adjustment: adding $2.1 million, all SGF, for the Excel in Career Technical Education Tuition Fund, or SB 155, as y'all know that. It's when high school students take technical college credits, and then the Board of Regents pays them back for that. This addition would result in total appropriation of $31.3 million for the program in FY 2021. And Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions for FY 2021.
In regards to the committee's recommendation for basically Senate Bill 155,
Yeah.
is the 2.1 million, is that for a full year or partial?
I think that was for the full year. And you know, what it is they go ahead, the students enroll, and they take the classes, and then it's the schools are paid back for that from the Board of Regents. So these are funds that they've already expended because the students have already taken the classes, so it's repaying the schools for the classes that the high school students took.
All right, thank you. And what is the demand in regards for high school students wanting to attend technical colleges?
It's a great demand.
Say it's very high.
It's high. We can find the numbers if you'll just hang on one second.
All And I just wanted to stress that Senate Bill 155 has been an extremely positive
Yes.
aspect in regards to high school students and also the technical colleges.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion? Representative Williams.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So we're just looking at moving from the 2020 to 2021 that the universities received about 108 million, or approximately over 100 million more than they did previously because of CARES money. So the governor supplanted money into their budgets. What predominantly could they use these monies for?
I think predominantly, well, there were two things. Some of it was money straight to the students, and then some of it was for, PPE and extra sanitizing and yes, okay, hang on. Let me see what I'm missing.
And then while you're looking for that, it's also 22 million for capital improvements. So is that $22 million increase also COVID money for capital improvements?
Okay, I'm sorry, can I answer that first question?
Yes.
So it also had to do with computers and technology, since there was going to be more remote learning. Okay, now.
Okay, and so then part of that 100+ million is 22 million increased in capital improvements. Is that COVID money also?
No.
It's not, it's just a $22 million increase.
And do you mind telling me what page you're looking at?
I'm actually looking at
The report?
your committee report,
Okay,
It's on page 787.
yeah, okay, that's what I was.
So those would be state institution building fund monies?
Okay, so that extra, it's a pretty common thing that happens every year, because they know in the current year more what they did in that year. And so it's common to have that increase in the capital improvements.
But it's $22 million. Do we know where or why it was such a significant increase from the state institution building funds? I'm assuming that's where it came from. And maybe it's normal to have that kind of big jump.
Yeah,
But
yeah, okay, so we can get you that information with specifically what it is, but it is spread out over all of those units. And there was something else Shirley said that I forgot.
Okay, don't worry. I'll talk to you offline. No problem.
But I think it's a good idea to understand exactly where that 22 million
It just seemed like a lot.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay?
Well, in regards to, and I don't know what discussion you had in regards to deferred maintenance in regards to all the universities across the state of Kansas, but in the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, we did have a report from all 6 Regent universities on the buildings that were, I believe they were under a D rating. Is that correct? And the total amount would be over $1 billion to address the deferred
1.2.
maintenance. What was that?
1.2, I think,
1.2.
is, yeah.
And so there is an issue in regards to deferred maintenance across the university system that we are going to have to address. So I just wanted to make that statement, because we did have a fairly lengthy conversation in the Joint Legislative Budget Committee during the interim.
I think there's a concerted effort to propose a plan for that.
All right, thank you. Representative Prahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could someone fill me in just a little bit on the lapsing of the reappropriations for KSU and PSU? I just don't understand what that is for sure.
It was something they didn't use the year before, and when they presented to our committee, they didn't ask. It lapsed since it wasn't used, and then the governor recommended, since it wasn't a big issue and they didn't ask, then we just let it go.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, another thing that I'd like to mention, I think Chairperson Humphreys kind of mentioned this. When the governor did her allotments for fiscal year 2021, I believe it was about $26 million that was lapsed from higher education, but replenished with the GEAR funding. And I think we'll probably talk about this in 2022, that $26 million has been put back in 2022. So just let everybody know that that did pass the State Finance Council. So they were held harmless because that money did get replenished by the GEAR funding.
Yeah, we called it the gear swap, or you called it the gear swap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, was there discussion about refund of tuition and reduced tuition for online courses and refund for the shortened term and online courses?
There was cursory discussion about it, but not as in-depth. And it's something that I've come to learn is that when you have 15 minutes for each university and they get to present, it's just tough. And so not like it would have been a good idea to dig in. So, but more discussion is very welcome.
Mr. Chair, I would like a lot more discussion on that. Colleges around the nation have reduced tuition by as much as 50 and 60%. Their enrollment is up as a result because of online schooling. My son attends K-State, and I couldn't be more disappointed in how they handled it. A severely shortened term last year. They started a few weeks late this year. They were done before Thanksgiving, but our kids are paying the same amount of tuition. That's a month off of an already short year. When they started back this year, they started the first 2 or 3 weeks. They didn't start actually until the end of January. And then their first few weeks were online. He had a class that was a lab class where he had to watch the person do the lab, and he's supposed to learn. I've talked to many parents who tell me that their kids aren't learning, that several of them watch their kids cheat on final exams because they take it together. They have one computer where they're doing the exam and another computer with their peers. I want a lot more discussion on that. And so I want to make a motion that we refund for every virtual day, we refund 50% of the tuition. And for every day that was shortened, we refund 100% of the tuition. I know that's a lot, but it will spur discussion before we look at this at the end of the year.
All right, I have some comments that I'll make after that. We heard the motion, seconded by Representative Owens. Discussion on the motion. One thing that I would probably entertain with the committee is that yesterday we scheduled our agenda for the next week. And we should be done with the budget report outs of all the budgets by Friday. And that's the intent, is to be done by Friday. The following week, we're going to be on the floor every day. Then we have turnaround, and then we'll be coming back. And I would say in regards to this motion, we can have the Board of Regents or the institutions of higher learning come in and talk about exactly how they handled the student academic policy in regards to the pandemic. So we can have that discussion after we come back from turnaround and before we start working on putting the budget together. Just want to make that comment. Representative Williams, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Were you all provided in your committee the amount of remote versus in-person learning for each university? Because at one time I made that request. I might even been from Shirley, and I did get it, and I have no idea where it is. But I know some universities were full-on meeting in person, and some were almost, predominantly remote. And there's not a real good way to audit it because in so many cases it's up to the professor, and they might be in class one day a week and then not in class for any other time period. So my question, it relates to the representative from Johnson County's motion. Is there a page in here that has the enrollment that we are able to look? And is there anything in here about the remote learning and how each university did? Because it is true that the universities that met full on, I mean, I think it's a fair consideration that they be fully funded, and because those students got what they paid for. And the students that had to sit in their dorm rooms didn't get what they paid for.
So we were not provided with that information as far as virtual versus in person. But I do think there is a chart in with the, what page is that on? Page 810.
And that's the enrollment.
That's the enrollment, yes.
And I think the document that I requested was the percentage, and it may have come from the Board of Regents, was a survey of what percentage time are you in person or remote. But that document is out there. I'll try to locate it, but that would be helpful actually for the motion. And then we would understand what the real fiscal note is or what the real cost is, because it could be based on the percentage of students in person.
I guess that'd be a question back to the representative that made the motion. Do we have a fiscal note on what this would be?
I don't know what the fiscal note could possibly be, but the fiscal note to the kids was pretty large.
Right. Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. I just wanted to take a minute and express some of the same concerns. I have a daughter that attends Wichita State, and I think not only was it challenging, they actually pay more. If you look at the activity of the fees that they're charged more for online learning in some instances than in-person learning. As I looked at these bills over this past year and I watched the challenges that she had as a result of that lack of in-person learning, and I think this conversation is going to extend into K-12 budget as well, as we consider some of the challenges that exist with our children in that circumstance as well. So I just wanted to, I look forward to having that conversation. I look forward to some accountability and some understanding in what's being done, because our higher ed institutions are certainly not without challenge, but we've got, well, as always, we've got to put our kids first. Thank you.
Representative Wolfmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not unsympathetic at all to the two representatives who have kids attending those schools and what that must have been like. However, it would be very difficult for me to vote yes today. I think the chairman of the committee already said they really didn't have a discussion about this, and we haven't heard from the universities or the regions. I don't know what the fiscal effect this would be. It seems like a little bit of a dangerous path to go down, but I fully support when we come back having that conversation and talking a little more about this and getting the full flavor of what this would do to their budgets or how this could be rectified for the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I was going to mention a few things that Representative Wolfmore mentioned as well, so I won't repeat them. I will also say I think the region institutions, Washburn, would appreciate being able to come in and talk about the difficulties that occurred or what they tried not to have happen in many ways, and be able to explain from their perspective what actually happened, or what happens, I should say, in the classes, and the options that they offered the students as well. I think you all know I work at the University of Kansas, and I was very aware and wanted to know a lot of those issues because I had friends in town. Even my neighbor next door wanted to know what happened because, you know, they have a daughter and a son going. So I looked into part of it. So I think they would appreciate that opportunity to come in and explain and answer your questions as well. I will say my neighbors said to me they realized that this was not something the university chose to do. It wasn't a decision that they entered into. It was pushed on them just like COVID was pushed on everyone else. And how do you handle and how do you keep people safe? And they appreciated the fact that a lot of this was based on the safety, but there were options provided, and some people could have done it strictly online. And it created another problem for faculty, because faculty used to be in the classrooms. Now everything has to be online. So I think it would give a better understanding of what all happened in many ways. And it wasn't something that they by any means chose to do. It was something they felt they had to do, and it was a safety measure. It was a city measure as well, with the ordinance and everything else. So I would be in favor of that as well, but I would not be in favor of voting for that today until after we have had an explanation of what happened. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Helgerson.
Well, I don't have any kids at either of any of the institutions, but I'm intrigued with this. If anyone is reading the newspaper, they see that the COVID has caused businesses to radically change their business models and go a totally different direction. And it was a cataclysmic change that has occurred in business. It was moving slowly there, but many businesses have now jumped ahead 10 years ahead of time from where they were. The university systems were first, I'll admit right up, they were poorly funded. And since they were poorly funded by us, they could not operate in the model that they had. But the model that they have is the model from 50 years ago. You don't think there's a radical change going on in the university systems across the country? We're closing our eyes. What I would have hoped is that some universities would have said, this is our opportunity to jump ahead to a new service delivery model and look at other universities that have all of their courses online, and some are even able to give them free. But I haven't seen that from the Regents institutions. What I see from the Regents institutions is, give us more money and we're going to keep the same model. The same model is not going to work anymore. The same model that we have seen over the years sees buildings declining, universities are offering fewer classes, and many of the times it's not within their mission. What they had as original mission, I use Wichita State as an example, that has moved toward one direction and away from liberal arts. I'm not sure if I'm going to vote for this or not, but the system has to be radically changed, or we're going to continue to put money in here and it's going to continue to go down compared to our peer institutions around the country.
Well, and one thing I might add in regards to Representative Helgerson's comments, and actually I'm a testament to this, because I attended the virtual college at Fort Hays State University. Although my bachelor's degree was from the University of Kansas. I'm an alumnus of the University of Kansas, but I pursued my master's of business administration through the virtual college at Fort Hays State University back in 2000. And Fort Hays State University was forward thinking and having a virtual college that was established in the late 1990s. So they were ahead of the curve. As to why the other region institutions didn't have that exact forward thinking, I think that is a premise to have that discussion when we have the Board of Regents and the universities coming here and discuss that with us. But I will also attest to the fact that when you do attend classes virtually, you have to be extremely disciplined and you have to teach yourself. It's not for everybody. And like I said, I will attest to that. And it's not easier. Actually, I think it's more difficult not being in-person learning, because you have to basically instruct yourself on the information that you need for the materials that are provided. So, Representative Williams.
Okay, I found the document, and I'm going to share that with you. And then also, if the maker of the motion would like to, I have a suggestion on how it could be modified. So I'll share that with you as well. But it's the 6 major universities, and they did a survey in September of how they were meeting. And the one that met in person the most was Emporia, 74%. Only 6% was online. KSU was 28% in person. KU was 33%. PSU was 56, and Wichita State didn't have in person. They only had hybrid at 87. So there's a column that says online only. That's 6%, 34%, 34%, 33%, 20%, 13%. I think it would be, as a mother that has someone at the university and has lots of friends that have dealt with this issue where you're a third-year engineering student at K-State and you're going to 0 classes. That's not good. When there are plenty of ways to get a professor 6 feet apart. So if we just did the online percentages, 6% for ESU multiplied by their student enrollment that's on 810 and have that paid with coronavirus money, because they're allotted money to provide back to students. So that money could be used to pay back based on their online percentage. And I can forward this document to you, Chairman. But it's 6%, 34, 34, 33, 20, 13. It's just a suggestion regarding the motion so that it would be very specific where it comes from. And maybe Shirley can weigh in on whether or not they can use it. But they're going to give money back to students based on, and the way that I understand it, there's a wide breadth of how they can give that money back to students, and each university did it differently. And it wasn't always needs-based. But this should be something that every parent, whether you're paying for it out of your pocket or you had a savings account, every student that had online only should be reimbursed a portion of that. So I do agree with that. But now we have the numbers to back it and to make it specific for each university, so it's not a giant. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So Representative Tarwater, did you want to make in regards to those comments, a modification to your motion?
Whatever we can do to help. So if we can modify it in such a way that returns the money for it, but I do want to keep the shortened term in there, because these students, they paid for an entire semester, and they got less than half a semester, the first semester. Second semester, they got about 2/3 in most of the institutions. And I realize that, it's not the institution's fault, but they did get a lot of federal dollars for these types of things, and it would be nice if the ones that actually suffered received the funds back. But if we wanted to make it in direct proportion to the number of days, I have no problem with that. I would like the amendment to pass, though, because I really think that's the only way we're going to get them to the table. But how would you word that? How would you suggest wording that, Representative?
We will probably need some help from Shirley or the revised, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, it said Representative Williams.
Okay, sorry, apologies. But we probably need help with the wording from the revisor or from Shirley, but basically what you would do is, so that you could determine the amount of money, you would take the tuition rate multiplied by the number of students or hours, credit hours for 2020, fall 2020, and then you would multiply that by their percentage online. So if you were that, like for example, for Emporia, they were mostly in person. So they would get a smaller pot of money. It would be 6 that they would hand it back out to the students. So then it would be divided among all students based on your tuition, your enrollment, and the online percentage. So I would need help. And again, I will forward this document from exactly how that would work. And you said 50% is what you said originally. So it would be 50% would be provided back.
What I would suggest, Representative Williams and also Representative Tarwater, is that we have further discussion in regards to this. Because I think the discussion that we're having today, there's a lot of information that we need to gather together as opposed to having an amendment put into a budget bill. Obviously, everybody in this room is aware This is not the last option that we have in regarding the budget. When we were actually constructing the budget and putting all these pieces back together, we can have a discussion on this after we have a discussion with the Board of Regents and the universities on exactly what they did in regards to remote learning. So we'll go ahead and vote on the underlying motion. As far as the modification to that motion, Representative Williams, I think we need to gather more information in regards to that. And you and I can work directly together on that. And then obviously, like I said, after we come back from turnaround, I'm going to have the regents and the universities here to discuss how they addressed the students' needs in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would stress wholeheartedly to not the modification right now. Let's get some more information. We'll vote on the underlying amendment, and we'll see what happens with that vote. But again, this is not the final time that we're going to be discussing this. We'll discuss this again when we put the budgets for fiscal year 21 and also 22, which we haven't gotten to yet, into the budget bill. Representative Wolfmore.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just clear. So when we're ready to vote, let us know what we're voting on. I'm not sure if Representative Tarwater's motion is.
We're going to be voting on the underlying motion, the initial motion that was made by Representative Tarwater in regards to remote learning and the costs. Representative Carlin, then Owens.
Well, first of all, I hope we get the motion restated before it's voted on, because I'm kind of confused about what the actual motion is. But also, I have a problem with the piece from the representative that talked about engineering having no classes in person. I'm not sure that's correct, and I think I'd like to have information on something like that. It's my understanding that the classes have been mixed, both in the early time and in this spring semester, that they have had opportunities to have some classes in person, and it's been a mixture. So, I mean, I haven't read up on it exactly, but I don't believe we've had 0 classes in engineering as for any group.
Hence the reason why we're going to have an update from the Board of Regents and the universities.
Thank you so much.
Representative Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't belabor some of the points that have already been made. I do want to commend the chair. While 15 minutes, we can cover a lot. She runs an efficient meeting. So we got to hear some of this from some of the universities. I just want to emphasize some of the comments that have been made about not changing, I'll try to keep it as close to the motion as possible, but the Board of Regents is undergoing a programmatic review that was already underway. The pandemic has been an accelerator on that. That's led to them eliminating academic programs, eliminating jobs and positions, faculty, staff, and student positions, all while they're also responding to the needs of the Kansas economy. They're adding programs where possible, like physician assistant programs, nursing programs, STEM programs. I know we'll have legislation that will address some of the top demand jobs in our state later on, data analytics. And so they're changing the delivery model. That's why we're seeing enrollment increases at schools like Fort Hays State University. And as far as in person or not, I'm excited that they're able to provide the opportunities for students to learn where they can. I'm certainly sympathetic to the comments that have been made by folks who have kids on campuses, but at the same time, we've got to look at a university with 25,000 students, 30% of in-person enrollment, still more people than 70% of a 6,000 person school. So even within those, I was a KU student. I had several courses in a 1,000 person lecture hall. You can't get 1,000 students in a room right now. And so I appreciate the motion. I'm sure this body will be very deliberative when you hear from an update from the regents. So I'll be opposing the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would follow up, but you can have 2,000 students online. And that makes it a whole lot cheaper when you get right down to it to have students be taught online. Our colleges, I think we just talked about our colleges receiving somewhere around $100 million in CARES Act funding. One of those purposes was to provide the equipment and the technology and whatever's needed to teach kids online. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that A, they saved a ton of money from not having students in person, just due to all of the facilities and utilities and everything else that goes along with it, but that they made a ton of money in the offset. So there's no reason that there is not funding available for this motion. The reality is, and the representative from Sedgwick pointed this out very well, that times are changing and the university system is not changing with it. So the idea that we're going to continue to increase SGF funding or that we're going to continue this same model when we know overall attendance is trending down anyway, something has got to change. And again, I wholeheartedly support this motion and look forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Representative Corbett.
I kind of agree with the motion. It's just like when the counties or whatever closed your businesses, restricted your hours or whatever. When we had the hearing and tax, those people that did the restricting, they were upset about that. But the businesses that were affected would like a portion of their property tax back. Just like if the county has skin in the game, they're more attentive. And it's just like the colleges and universities. If they've got some skin in the game, then everybody knows where they're at, and I'd be supporting the motion.
Representative Estes.
I'm really glad we're on this topic because with higher ed and K through 12 ed, I have teachers, professors, parents all asking, where does the money go? Teachers, when they look at their classroom, they feel like they don't see where the money was spent. And I'm not saying that it wasn't spent well, but I am saying it's important that we have a very detailed breakdown of where all the CARES money went. And I'd look forward to hearing that when we have higher ed back in to testify.
And I'm sure we'll get that information because, as I expressed to the committee after a previous State Finance Council meeting, we had learned that in the last relief package, higher ed is getting, I believe it's $103 million from the last package. And so, again, that's the reason why we're going to have the Board of Regents and their universities before this committee before we put the budget bill together. Representative Williams, did you have any further comments?
Well, I apologize because I know this is the third time on speaking on this topic, but I was just going to add, I think we have a good base to work from. We all want that. And if Representative Tarwater works with the Board of Regents on a revised plan and brings it back to us, that makes sense. Thank you.
Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of the $100 million or so that the universities received, I am under the impression that a lot of that money went back to students for refunds for tuition, for at least for their dorms, their room rents that they had paid to the universities, and some other fees that there was direct money went back to the students. I wonder if Shirley or Susan or Representative could tell us how much of that money went directly back to the students, at least in that first round.
Representative Humphreys.
50%, more or less, went to the students. And it was to return things like their parking fees. And I don't know about the dorm, okay, the housing. It depended on the school. Yep. So, but it was some of the fees that they had to pay for specific things, dining, that kind of
Healthcare or any of that. I mean, there's a lot of fees that a student pays. So I don't know how much of it was refunded, but when they were sent home, I know the students got refunds. And so I want that to be a part of this information, please. Thank you.
Representative Helgerson.
Representative Owens, and this conversation brought up another train of thought, and that is, we normally don't look at year-to-dates in the various universities and what they spent and what they didn't. Representative Carlin just brought up the idea of fees were returned. Many fees in many of the institutions are what is used for bonding authority. So when we get into this further discussion, we'll need to look at year-to-dates and what was substituted. And I'm assuming that the committee did not look at this, but look at, was federal funds used to substitute for the funds, or was it only used in partial? It is not, sometimes when you've gotten funds from the feds, you've actually been able to double dip. You've kept the funds because you didn't have it kept, and you were able to get a chunk of money in addition to it, meaning you were supposed to provide the services, and you got 2 pots of money for the same services, and you didn't even provide the services. Not that that's against what they're supposed to do, but this brings up a whole list of other questions in my mind, and that is the more of the detail of if they got money to supplant money that we had given them, was any of it given back? The fees, are the fees used to balance some building programs, and can they give it back, or did they give it back? You know, the questions are going to, I'll leave it at that. My mind's just going on and on.
Just so many questions, and each university did do things differently. And, you know, the governor allotted 26.5, I think, million from the universities, and then, but it was that gear swap where they did get it from the gear money, but she did allot the 26.5. So some of that hopefully wasn't double dipping. But I think a deep dive would be excellent.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll simply just repeat again what I said. I believe they would welcome to come in here and explain, because it seems that there's a lot of speculating going on. And I think part of it, if you want the information, you should get it from the people who were, our region institutions are very diverse. If we look at each one, not only size, but their mission, what they do, and everything else. And, you know, and that's one. You know, and when I think about it, over 25 years ago, the legislature was actually funding region institutions almost 50%. And we look at where we are today. And I don't know if we're at 20% or 21%. And I think part of that, there's so much speculation about where the CARES money goes and who did what. And I mean, that's for businesses, that's for individuals, that's for everybody. I think we should have this discussion, because I don't believe, I know, the university has nothing to hide. They're going to tell you what they were doing. And I will also tell you that they're not pleased with what they've been able to do, having to act so quickly in order to provide for students and their parents and even their donors on campus. They're not happy. They were just responding like everyone else, scrambling, trying to make it work and provide options. So provide that opportunity for them to come in. I think we will learn a lot, the same as we do from other people who come in to talk about various topics. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and I can only reiterate that, I mean, I've already said it publicly in here, that we're going to have the Board of Regents come back when we come back from turnaround. Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A number of the other speakers have kind of taken some of my talking points away from me here, so my open mic routine is going to be a little shortened. But I am in support of the motion, of the original motion, because I think it will lead to more frank and open discussions when Regents comes before us. I suspect that the Williams modification is probably something closer to what we'll end up with. But, and I'd be open to that as well, but I will be supporting the underlying motion. One of the things that I want to make sure that we include in this discussion, and it's been brought up a few times, is both the state allotted money, not allotted, sorry, the state money that was provided to universities for, through the CARES Act, as well as federal money received directly to them. I think we need to make sure that those numbers are available to us when we have these discussions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to point out for everyone, at the direction of the chairperson in the budget subcommittee, we did hear from every university how they spent their COVID-19 funds. I'm sure they'd be happy to provide that as well. If you want copies in the meantime, I'd be happy to make them and provide them for you. Down to the dollar, they expressed how they funded or how they spent all of it. And what we heard from every institution is, I appreciated the transparency on how they spent it, but the CARES Act funding didn't cover the entirety cost of all of the different parts of how they used it. So it supplemented several of the things that they used it for, but not all of it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, committee, any further discussion in regards to the amendment? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks. That information would actually be useful even in one case to see how one university would have spent it if it is easy to share or read. And this one, which way to go, is a little challenging in that I absolutely like to have everything clear in terms of what the cost is, where it's going, and knowing where it comes from. So there are a lot of great questions that are raised. And then I'm torn between, do we go ahead and make a motion in that we know it will be addressed if the motion is on the table, and are we as confident that there will be that forum that everyone comes to really vet it going forward? As uncomfortable as that is, as misunderstood as it would be as folks interpret it, and that's another important piece, how will that be viewed as folks try to get a handle on what the legislature is doing? As I think what we're doing at this point is asking questions, and it could be misinterpreted as being we're making a specific recommendation. I don't know that we're quite to that point. But I think making sure that that happens is important, and that may be the bigger one that comes up on my vote.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been sitting here listening, and as a past chair of this committee, one of the things this summer is that we had a committee of members of the Board of Regents and community college. All interested parties were represented, Republicans, Democrats, and so on. And we met the summertime into the fall virtually and even in person, being socially distanced. And that idea was looking at the future of higher education. And that when the plan was originally put into place, it was to kind of look at that 20, 30-year plan. COVID hit, changed everything. As one senator that was on said, instead of looking at, are we going to do some remodeling, you know, the house is on fire and we need to get the bucket to put the fire out. I appreciate it. I have one of my kids in a technical school. The challenges of doing technical education via online has been a bit of a struggle, but this year has come with that. I appreciate my good friend from Johnson County and the passion that he has for finding answers. You know, I think as we look at this whole situation, Mr. Chairman, to me this is a global conversation. If we want to look at higher education, it's easy. You know, we look at filled stadiums or field houses. Well, that's a different thing. Those athletic corporations are different than the students, you know, on campus or online. I know in talking with many institutions, students would go back. They had the option to go in class, or they could stay in their dorm. A lot of them stayed in their dorm. Surveys, absolutely, surveys show that students want to be in class. Maybe instructors didn't want to be. I don't know if that's our role. The Board of Regents has put the onus on our universities to, you know, come up with plans. I think, you know, we all understand that things have to change, but I would dare say we look at all of education. If we're going to get down to how many, knapsacks were purchased or how, where dollars went, I think we need to go to K-12. And thinking the K-12 was protected because of the Constitution, well, we can still dig, absolutely. What about when you have a constituent that calls and they get upset because they can't find anybody at a state agency and they yell at you because who's working? I mean, we can draw this out as long as we want. Is everything right? Well, I get that, but it's the same thing of, as others have said, institutions and things that are driven by property tax. What about those schools that were closed last year? The administration closed schools in March. Kids weren't there. Should that all be rebated back to those that paid it? I know there's been a bill in taxation, but maybe here's the where this conversation needs to happen. What about transportation didn't, some of the potholes didn't get fixed and I blew out a tire. Should I be able to claim that back to the state because of COVID, because folks were not working? I mean, I don't mean to make light of this. Higher education is important, but as I have said, education is pre-K through 20. And we need to look at education as the whole. To split this out, to me, is where we've created a fight that doesn't need to happen. But let's take a complete look at education. Where teachers went over the money. Well, I think teachers got paid. I know it was a struggle. I have a daughter-in-law that's a teacher, an elementary teacher, one of those critical ones. And the struggle to make sure that they're providing that education for those youngsters who are in the key learning points, and those administrators that work, to make sure that those teachers have what they need. It's the same thing on a collegiate level, whether it be our regents or a community college or a tech school. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I didn't mean to go on so long, but I think really this is a global conversation that we need to have kind of with all that. We can look at as we build this budget, have kind of an accountability of all this, and we can drag this out till June or July. I believe by then it may be up to 60 degrees. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Representative. As I mentioned before, we are going to be having the Board of Regents before this committee after turnaround. Again, I'll mention that. Any further discussion? Representative Carpenter.
Very quickly, this has gone on so long, I forgot what the hell we were talking about.
I was going to have Representative Tarwater restate the motion when he moves it.
Could somebody please restate the motion so that I can
Representative
catch
Tarwater.
up?
Yes, sir. My motion was simply that the colleges return 100% of tuition for the number of days that were shortened of the semester and 50% of any virtual days refund of tuition.
Is that sufficient, Representative Carpenter?
I think I can understand that.
Any further discussion? Representative Owens.
Just a quick clarification. So are we speaking of just tuition or tuition and fees? Because fees make up generally more than tuition.
Representative Tarwater.
Representative, they refunded all the fees for like dorms and food, parking, but it was pointed out they used federal dollars for that and they got to keep the fees. But the students have been made whole on the fees, just not the tuition.
All right, any further discussion? I do. Representative Ballard.
A clarification again. I don't have any qualms at all with having the discussion and bringing it up there, but still to address percentages when we don't really know the whole story. I'm not thinking that that's really realistic. And did I not hear percentages still being mentioned?
Percentages are mentioned, and actually earlier in the conversation in regards to the amendment, I believe I even asked what the fiscal note might possibly be, and we don't know at this time.
All right, well then, maybe I better hear your motion again.
Representative
I know it's
Tarwater.
long, but it's your motion.
Return 50% of tuition for virtual days. Return 100% of tuition for days that they were not taught.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Tarwater, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, first I should probably apologize to you. I didn't mean to spring this on you. I should have discussed this with you beforehand. However, I guess I was naive in thinking that this would have come out at some time. I mean, it's a huge issue. I get calls all the time. I talk to a lot of my peers that get calls all the time. They're very frustrated with what's going on and how their kids are being taught. Yes, in K-12 and especially K-12, but the few that are in college are completely upset. In K-12, breaking this out from K-12, I understand that you're trying to put them back in the same boat, but the families don't pay for K-12. They do with property taxes, and they want those back. I hear from my constituents all the time. They want their dollars back that they paid for taxes because their kids aren't being taught. So that is a different discussion. As far as the fiscal note goes, as I said before, it seems like everybody's been made whole in this, except for the families. And I use my family as a example, but every family's in it. I mean, my sons and I have saved our entire lives to send them to college. I failed to mention I have one at KU who had all kinds of crazy biology classes this year, and he learned nothing on the labs. He had to watch somebody do the labs. And he spent my son that goes to KU has spent all of his savings in my savings, and it was tens of thousands of dollars. And we've also taken out student loans, just like all other families do. And for what? This last year, they really didn't learn anything. The institutions were made whole, or at least partially whole. Our families are crying for help. They don't understand it. I spoke to a Missouri family that has their son at K-State. They got some tuition back because they pay out-of-state tuition, but Kansas didn't. We talk about student debt all the time, but I can't believe there hasn't been any discussion on this all the way. We've been in session for well over a month. And again, I'm sorry to spring it on you, but there was no discussion, so we need to spur the discussion. And I know there might be a fiscal note here, but I'm a business guy, and I can tell you, when you go into a negotiation, you need to have a position. This gives us a position. And it was mentioned earlier that if, they're going to come and talk. Well, they come and talk, and we hear excuses all the time. We need a response. We need a solution. And if we don't have a position, if we just say, okay, yeah, come on in, we'll discuss this because Representative Tarwater's mad. You hold a lot more cards when you have a dollar figure. And yeah, it's kind of a crazy motion, but it gives us a good, solid position to start from. We've received text from some of the boards of regents. They think it's a good idea. And they're willing to work with us and come up with a solution before they meet with you, Mr. Chair, before they come before your committee. And I'm willing to put the work in with them so that we can come up and have a good discussion. And I would encourage, if this amendment passes, or even if it doesn't, that anyone and any and all information and questions that you want answered, get them to me. because nothing bothers me more when we ask people questions and they say, we'll get back to you, and then it just kind of disappears. That happens a lot up here. So all I'm asking for is that we go into this with this good, solid position. We know we're going to look at this again. We know we're going to have good discussion on it, just like we had today. But we've got to have a position in order to get anywhere, in order to get the answers that we want. We may end up not changing anything. Maybe they have good answers. But we need them to come to the board or come before us, and we need them to bring their A game. So it wasn't the university's fault. COVID was real. I get that. It was so real that they all got it. I mean, every college kid I know got it within the first 2 weeks of being in college. Just because they weren't in classes doesn't mean that they weren't out and about and around each other. Most of them were too afraid to say anything because they didn't want to be sent home because they were having a good time. So in closing, I guess you just say it's time to put our money where our mouth is. We talk about student debt all the time. I guess we're going to find out who in this room cares about the student debt and those that want to protect the big institutions. I would imagine that your constituents will know. My guess is this will end up being some sort of division vote because there's a lot of passion on both sides. But I'd ask you to look at it from that standpoint. That are you going to back the families in your district, or are you going to back the institutions? With that, I close. Thank you.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Here to have it. Division has been called. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. All right, and those that are attending via WebEx, let me pull you up. What was the opposition? 6. All right, the motion passes on a vote with those in the room and also on WebEx, 14 in favor and 6 against. So motion passes. We're back on the budget for fiscal year 2021. Any further discussion on fiscal year 2021? Seeing none, Chairperson Humphreys, you may move on to fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just make one comment.
That's fine, you may.
About the motion. I would just encourage, I appreciate the representative. Come to him with questions, but I want to be involved in this discussion also. So it's a team effort, and thank you for that. Okay, now moving on, fiscal year 2022. The agency's requests an operating budget of $3.0 billion, including $877.8 million SGF for fiscal year 2022. This is an all-funds decrease of $34.4 million, or 1.1%, and an FGS increase of $50.5 million, or 6.1% from the FY 2021 revised estimate. The all-funds decrease is due to the reduction of the federal funds provided in fiscal year 2021 due to COVID-19. The increase of SGF monies is due to the enhancement request of $49.3 million, and the increased expenditures in salaries and wages for fringe benefits. If you would like to see what that enhancement request, what they were, it's page 799 in your binder, if you'd like to see what that was. The agencies request capital improvements, so about capital improvements, a budget of $111.8 million, including $609,656 SGF for fiscal year 2022. This is an all-funds decrease of $35.0 million, or 23.8%, and an SGF increase of $2,306, or 0.4%, from the FY 2021 revised estimate. The all-funds decrease is due to an overall decrease in planned capital improvement expenditures. The SGF increase is for debt service principal payments. Now, the governor's recommendation, she recommends expenditures of $2.9 billion, including $822.7 million SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $55.1 million, or 1.8%, and an SGF decrease of so it's all from SGF, $55.1 million, or 7.8% below the agency's requests. The decrease is due to the governor not recommending the enhancement requests and recommending inclusion of 55% of the reduced resources budget submitted by the universities. So they submitted a 10% reduction, and she took 55% of that 10%. Let's see. Approximately $4 million from the Board of Regents, which does not include scholarships, and the majority of the community and technical college expenditures reduction, that she kept that part in. In addition, the governor added a 2.5% increase to the Board of Regents administration program and a 2.5% increase, $10.3 million, to the university operating grant, which is equivalent to the proposed 2.5% employee plan. So rather than all employees getting 2.5%, it's lumped together in one sum of $10.3 million. The governor also added $26.3 million SGF to restore the SGF allotment. We already talked about that when the governor provided the universities with the gear funds. The governor concurs with the capital improvement budgets for 2022. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendations with the following adjustments. Number one is similar to what the committee recommended for 2021, except it's adding $8.3 million, all SGF, for the Excel and Career Technical Tuition Fund. That's that SB 155, Technical Education for High School Students repayment to the technical colleges. This addition would result in a total appropriation of $36.8 million for the program in fiscal year 2022. Number two, add $566, all SGF, for the National Guard Scholarship Program for fiscal year 2022. This addition would result in a total appropriation of $4.4 million for the program. So we did not recommend that in 2021, but we put it back in 2022, that scholarship program for the National Guard. Number three, add language not allowing the Board of Regents to transfer funds from the following accounts: tuition for technical education, non-tiered course credit hours grant account, that non-tiered are the technical classes, or post-secondary tiered technical education state aid account for fiscal year 2022. The Board of Regents has not transferred from those funds, but this is just a proactive recommendation that they're not allowed to do that. And number four is similar, add language to the tuition for technical education account that the payment will be made within 60 days after the student class start date for fiscal year 2022. Usually happens afterwards, after the semester. Number five, recommend the committee review adding $10 million to the university operating grant within the Board of Regents for the universities at Omnibus for 2022. The board would dictate where that goes and to whom. Number six, request the committee reviews the governor's entire 2.2% pay plan for fiscal year 2022. That's the whole thing. This would include the $76,770 in the Board of Regents administration program and $10.3 million in the university operating grant for the state universities. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for questions.
All right, committee, any questions for Representative Humphreys? Representative Williams.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Can we clarify on the pay raises of 2.5%? We must, going back a week ago when we had that big discussion, we did not decide on a global response to that. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So the one thing I would just bring up to the committee, we keep having this 2.5, and I don't know historically what's been provided to the universities. But it does concern me because the consumer price index for the United States for 2020, from most accounts that I've read, is 1.7, or actually it's 1.4, and the average in the last 10 years has been 1.7, but we keep just doing these automatic 2.5s, even when we're in difficult times, even when, as I mentioned a week ago or more, when we have 60,000 employers that will get a tax increase because we have an unemployment fund that has to be filled. So I just am disappointed that this is included.
Well, if I could explain.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Representative Humphries.
So number 6 is saying we need to review all of that. So we're agreeing with you on that for sure. And then the other, that 10.3 million, is basically we're setting aside. The universities, it's the same amount that they would use for a 2.5% pay increase. But we are like setting that aside. And our committee does have ideas on where we might recommend to the Board of Regents that would go. And the Board of Regents has ideas on where they would like that 10.3 million to go. And it is not necessarily to pay increases.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
And again, I just wanted to clarify, and when we had the discussion, we had the judicial branch budget. That's where we had the discussion in regards to, and actually there was an amendment that was proposed by Representative Landwehr to have this be a global item. And I would just say, in regards to the purview of this committee, we will discuss that when we put the budget bill together. In regards to, do we want to do the 2.5% pay raise for state employees? Who's going to be included? That discussion will happen when we put the state budget together. So just because we may adopt this amendment or the recommendation from the Budget Committee, we will have this come up again when we actually debate the budget. I'm sure we're going to debate that at length as we have in past years. Representative Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, not a question, but a comment of, I appreciate the committee for kind of, I guess, punting that responsibility to this committee rather than us making that decision. And just a reminder that the $10.3 million does not cover the cost of a 2.5% pay increase for 19,000 FTEs at the Board of Regents institutions. It's only the state's portion of their overall budgets. It would cost at least 5 times that to actually provide a 2.5 pay increase across the board. So given the fact that the current proposal is a 5.5% SGF cut to our universities, it would be unlikely that they would be able to finance a pay increase across the board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the clarification.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify, number 5, it says 10 million. This is technical, but should it be 10.3?
No, that's a separate issue. That's a separate.
It is separate.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further discussion? The only other thing that I would mention is I did receive an email from Shirley in regards to a statement to be made from Representative Burris on your committee, who has communicated that he does not believe the following budgets are ready for the presentation to the House Appropriations Committee, and that was the post-secondary education system-wide. Can you explain that?
Similar to when I reported out last week, Representative Burris just, he made a statement. He did not sign the report, but he just believed that we didn't have sufficient time to review everything, and so he was disapproving of the process.
All right. And so that needs to be recorded in the minutes.
Yes.
All right, seeing no further discussion, Representative Humphries, you may make a motion.
Thank you. I'll make a motion, but I'll make a comment first okay. So I appreciate so much the discussion that we have, and I really appreciate the fact that this committee, we're looking at global issues. I mean, it's huge, it's big, but these are set out separately. These budgets are separate for us, so we do have to take them one budget at a time. So I feel like we are biting off one piece of the elephant at a time, and this is the piece that we're dealing with today. And the motion that we pass has to do with how we do that, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the focus on the students and the families too, and as well as our excellent university system that we have with the regents, the community colleges, the private schools, and the technical colleges. I've been really privileged to be able to learn more about what they do and how they operate. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Budget Committee recommendations for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 for post-secondary education system-wide.
As amended.
As amended.
All right, committee heard the motion, seconded by Representative Woodward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. All right, thank you, Representative Humphreys. All right, now we'll go ahead and I'm going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 1. Once again, that is authorizing the State Fair Board to use monies in the State Fair Capital Improvements Fund for general operations for fiscal years 2021 and 2022. And so, Victoria, are you on WebEx?
I'm in person.
Oh, you're
sorry.
in person. Oh,
I was
there you
hiding
are.
in the other room.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Victoria Potts with Legislative Research, and I'll be briefing Senate Bill 1. And I'll keep it brief since I know that the interim general manager is online. So Senate Bill 1 would allow the State Fair Board to expend monies from its State Fair Capital Improvements Fund in the same manner as monies from its State Fair Fee Fund for fiscal years 21 and 22. Currently, the State Fair Capital Improvements Fund can only be used for payments on capital improvements and maintenance of the state fairgrounds and payments of capital improvements obligations. The State Fair Fee Fund does not have such restrictions. And the last thing I would note, the State Fair Capital Improvements Fund is funded by two funding sources. First is an annual $300,000 transfer from the State Fair Fee Fund. And the second is the Capital Improvements Fund receives receipt of sales tax of sales made on the state fairgrounds. And Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Victoria? Now, we just had the motion pass in regards to the budgets for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 in regards to the Kansas State Fair. And we had an amendment of the $1.3 million, which the State Fair had asked for during the interim to be included in that from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. How does this bill impact what we have just recently passed out in regards to the State Fair?
Sure, I think that with the addition of the 1.3 and the already allocated 1 million, those two do make up for the lost revenue, but this bill doesn't add money, I would note. It just gives the State Fair a little more flexibility, maybe in the meantime, in case something does happen to the 1.3 million that you just added, to spend the higher balance in capital improvement fund compared to the fee fund. So I think it's just about the flexibility for them to adjust to their loss of revenue.
And I do know we've had conversations in the past in regards to capital improvements that need to be made for the Kansas State Fair. Do we have a total dollar amount on what those capital improvement needs are?
Sure. So the State Fair for fiscal year 2021 has estimated about $1 million in capital improvements. And for fiscal year 2022, about $1.3 million in capital improvements. And that does include debt service, just for.
All right, thank you, Victoria. Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize because I do not have the bill in front of me. Is this a one-time opportunity and is there a cap on the transfer?
Victoria?
So it would just be for fiscal years 21 and 22, but there is not a cap on how much the agencies can spend from the fund if the bill were to pass.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I think, not having a cap out there is just a little bit disconcerting because all of these funds are set up out there for a reason. And it's been a lot of years since we've done a major capital investment in the State Fair. And I think they've done a pretty good job of trying to keep them up better than what they had prior to that. So I'm not sure what that cap amount is, but I think it's something that we need to consider. And then they can always take and come back to us if they're needing more or appear before the State Finance Council.
All right, any further questions for Victoria? All All right, seeing none. Thank you, Victoria, for being here. The only proponent that I do have in regards to Senate Bill 1 is Ed Berger, the interim general manager of the Kansas State Fair. Ed? And he was going to be appearing virtually.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Senate Bill 1 is simply enabling legislation that would allow the Kansas State Fair to use the capital improvement fund for general operations. It is just for emergency purposes. Our hope would be that we would not use that fund. That fund is something that is tremendously important to us as far as keeping the campus in the kind of shape that it should be. Certainly, if we have the $1.3 million added into the budget, there would not be a need to access this at all. Currently, we started the year with about $610,000 in the capital improvement fund. We have used some of that money for repairs, but we have also taken a couple of maintenance salaries out of that budget as well. We typically have significant dollars generated for that fund from sales tax. This year, we have only added about $88,000 into the capital improvement fund. So again, this is more or less kind of an emergency type of situation. Our goal is not to use it at all, but our goal certainly is to keep the fair viable. And if it's possible for us or impossible for us to have those kinds of funds just to keep the operation going, we would certainly dip into that capital improvement fund. There is a sunset on it of July 30th, 2022. So it's something that's going to be short term. And again, it's our goal not to have to use it at all, but certainly if worse comes to worse, we want to have the flexibility to use it at least if we need to.
All right, thank you, Mr. Berger, for being here. Any questions for Mr. Berger? Seeing none, thank you again for attending here in regards to Senate Bill 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the committee.
I am not showing any other proponents, nor am I showing any opponents or neutral testimony. So at this moment, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 1. And until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Representative Carlin, your bill introduction.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd like to introduce House Bill 21 RS 1236. It concerns property tax relating to valuation of property, excluding hypothetical lease fees in the fair market value regarding the dark store theory.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion for the bill introduction. Is there a second? Second by Representative Sutton. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bill is introduced. Any further bill introductions? Seeing none, until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we are adjourned.